welcome back to the Kerouac Project of Orlando for the second installment of the Kerouac Project of Orlando Book Club. I'm here with Matt Peters, publisher of Beating Windward Press. Yeah, you can applaud.
It's not.
All right. So
I'm just the janitor.
We are continuing with our conversation about William S. Burroughs' first quartet of books, the second of which is Queer, second manuscript he wrote, not published until the mid-1980s.
85.
And the artwork was a painting Burroughs did, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, the 90s books all had different art for Burroughs because he had been doing painting for about 10, 15 years.
The first book, Junkie, was kind of interesting in an anthropological sense and occasionally funny in ways that maybe wasn't trying to be funny, but
there was a dark humor through it.
The shambling exploits of junkies trying to rip people off in the streets and on the subways, trying to generate enough cash to get more drunk.
The same humor of the movie like The Salton Sea or Spun, where it's junkies like get this crazy idea to do a heist of some sort, this absurd thing, and then because they're junkies, it just fails spectacularly.
And that book ends with Burroughs kind of forecasting what part of Queer would be about, which is the pursuit of a better drug called Yahe. Yeah, tell me about Queer and Burroughs' development as a writer between this and Junkie.
Okay. The first thing bouncing around my head is the way Junkie ended with sort of this, hey, let's go look for Yahe, was kind of a result of the publisher wanting Junkie to be longer, and Burroughs had already started on Queer, and so they were like, well, let's just take these parts out of Queer and rewrite them and make them fit into Junkie. And that's kind of where that part came from. But yeah, Queer kind of takes it definitely takes a different tact. It changes point of view to third person, and it's more of Burroughs' pursuit of a young Army student or student at the University of Mexico on the GI Bill, like Burroughs was. Burroughs has said that Junkie was being on junk and Queer was what happens when you stop junk. It's like recovering.
So we have a switch in point of view from first person to third person, and yet there's kind of a balance in terms of style. This is a much more stylized book than Junkie, I would say.
Okay. Example?
For example, we get William Lee doing these routines that kind of become, the things in Naked Lunch that are the most memorable.
Right. What your grandma would call spinning yarns.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess this book is all about him being focused on, and I want to call him Alderon, and that's wrong. It's the wrong
Allerton.
Gene Allerton is the character who he's obsessed with, and he can hold Allerton's attention and get him to laugh and get a reaction out of him by telling these absurd, ridiculous stories, routines, kind of just making up bullshit on the spot and spinning a yarn to entertain him. And as it goes along, the routines get more and more outlandish and more, they tend to be very violent. They aren't quite, there is some sex to them, not as much as develops further in Naked Lunch, where it's a mix of body horror and homoerotica. I feel like I should give an example of one, but they're having a conversation about baked Alaska being ice cream that is cooked on the outside, so it's hot on the outside and cold on the inside, and Burroughs gets this idea and starts spinning this story about how he wants to open a restaurant where they'll serve live pigs, and they'll set the pig on fire in the kitchen, and it will run out to your table and die right there. And then when you cut into the pig, it's cooked on the outside, but the inside, the pig is still alive and raw, which is horribly grotesque, but it definitely gets Allerton gets he's having not a fit, but he's laughing and cackling and very entertained by this absurd story.
So he's performing as this sort of wild storyteller for Allerton, not just for Allerton, but mostly for Allerton.
Yeah, he spins it for other people, but once his focus gets on Allerton, and everything in the book seems to be directed pretty much towards him.
Yeah, a nice straight boy who will nevertheless tolerate some homosexual...
Only twice a week.
...advances. Allerton, I guess we would today call him heteroflexible.
Curious, maybe? Bi-curious, because he seems to kind of reach a point where he's like, yeah, this isn't for me. You know, we don't learn, even reading Burroughs' biography, we don't learn much what happens to the real person of Allerton later. But he kind of just goes back home and breaks off, like he just ghosts him. He breaks off all contact, won't respond to his letters, almost like he's ignoring that part of his life. So, yeah, maybe...
Like he's going through a phase.
Yeah, it's a phase, or he's trying it out, and I guess seeing if he likes it or seeing how he feels about being that way, because there's a lot of the social pressure of being openly gay or openly queer at the time. Not that there isn't now.
And in this case, so it's happening in Mexico, which is where...
Mexico City.
Much of the story takes place.
Yeah.
And...
Around 1950, 51.
And William Lee is using these routines to try and get on people's wavelengths so that he can get what he calls connection. And throughout the book, we get the sense that he sees this compulsion for, you know, this desire for human contact to be this parasitic thing. Like it's part possession, part...
Keep going, you got to convince me.
Well, he imagines, for example, so he and Allerton go to the movies and they see Jean Cocteau's Orpheus, which is one of the best movies ever made. The lead character feels this impulse like, oh, yeah, I need to make a pass at him. And that's, I think, like a normal enough thing. If you're attracted to someone, you feel these impulses, you maybe imagine it. But for him, imagining it is like on a psychic level doing it, which is somehow connected to the whole Yahé thing, where if you are on Yahé, apparently telepathy and, you know, even more psychological or spiritual transference is supposed to be possible.
Yeah, it heightens telepathic abilities or telepathic reception. I definitely get the idea that he's wanting the Yahé to help make a stronger connection between him and anybody, but definitely him and Allerton. I guess I just didn't get the parasite part of it yet in the book. Get that feel. I don't remember how I read it. I think when I read it in 96 or 97, it was just, oh, it's, you know, transgressive queer stuff or
queer not. Stuff at all is transgressive.
It was just the fun of that. But now reading it older, it's really, really fucking sad. It's like he's really socially awkward, and even socially awkward for a gay man at the time, because he would consider himself he considered himself queer, not gay, which to him, like, being gay was being really out, openly effeminate, and almost the stereotypical, I think they call them screaming fags in the book. So he's like wanting to be macho and be straight, but have sex with men, and doesn't want to date the gay men because they're too gay, so he's going to date the straight men that aren't interested in being gay. So he's setting himself up for frustration. But yeah, there's just all this social awkwardness of him, you know, because definitely he tries these routines out on people and they're just like, what the fuck? And like take their drink and walk away kind of situation.
Yeah, you're very entertaining. You're also a crazy person, so I don't know if I want to invite you back for drinks.
Yeah, it's like, oh God, Lee's at the party, watch the fuck out. You know?
So it solves and creates a problem at the same time, these routines. Here is a description of one of those moments of desire. It's on page 25. An imaginary hand projected with such force it seemed Allerton must feel the touch of ectoplasmic fingers caressing his ear, phantom thumbs smoothing his eyebrows, pushing the hair back from his face. Mm-hmm. I think the easiest way to interpret that is, all right, here's a queer man who isn't completely at home being queer, but the way he's imagining it is like, oh no, on one level, this is like Dracula. This is like a monstrous thing.
Well, and he calls himself a monster at one point, or almost in parody, but saying it's monstrous. The next line there was, or the second next line, Lee felt the aching pain of desire in his lungs. So yeah, that like just internal craving, vampiric wanting to possess. And there's definitely a lot of wanting to completely physically merge with the other person. Mm-hmm. Like, not just like, I want to penetrate you with your penis or have you penetrate me. I want our bodies to physically melt and morph together and be inside each other. Which I relate to that or understand that or have felt that desire to be that close with somebody. So I kind of get that. Maybe, hopefully everybody else too, right?
Well, I think, I forget what philosopher Joseph Campbell was referring to, but, he talked about human romantic relationships or long-term relationships, and you give up a big part of your individuality to the other person. Or if it's a healthy relationship, you give it to the relationship, and they give something to the relationship, and the relationship overall is something stronger. Because each individual is contributing, half of themselves to this other thing that defines them less, but comforts them if you're with the right person. I think this need for Burroughs to connect, he's like, oh yeah, no, it's only unhealthy and it's kind of dangerous and it's kind of monstrous, this whole thing of giving up part of yourself and needing other people. So the weird, monstrous language continues. This is the scene from the movie theater. In the dark theater, Lee could feel his body pull towards Allerton. Normal enough desire. Amoeboid protoplasmic projection, straining with a blind worm hunger to enter the other's body, to breathe with his lungs, see with his eyes, learn the feel of his viscera and genitals. So there it's that merging thing that Joseph Campbell was talking about is like, no, this is literal. This is some monstrous Lovecraftian.
Right. Well, very, very
body horror.
Burroughs body horror of turning, protoplasmic and people turning to jelly or junkies turning to jelly. There's one routine in Naked Lunch where the cop, the narcotics officer, literally can go up next to a junkie and almost absorb him like a blob and get high off of surrounding the junkie and extracting the drugs from his system. That was just Burroughs flavor to me. Oh yeah, we're just going to turn into blobs, and my skin's translucent, my fingers are ectoplasmic probes.
But with Burroughs, it's hard to tell. Is this him dramatizing the way he feels, or
I don't think so.
Is this him saying, no, literally, this is this is what's happening?
I think that's the way he thinks about it.
Yeah.
I think this book, and Burroughs really was resistant to publishing this book when they found it, because it was lost forever and he didn't have to worry about it. He just said, it's never going to be out. And then they find a complete copy of it in Ginsberg's papers where he had mailed the copy to Ginsberg, and he's like, oh crap, they're going to want to publish this. And he was really against it because he's so honest in it and open and kind of, very much laying himself bare and being vulnerable about how he feels and his desire. And there's much more of that vulnerability and honest emotion, I think, than the body horror, even then was in Junkie, and then definitely then will be in his later work. This is even almost more of a straightforward book than Junkie was, because we're now getting that missing emotional, the emotional significance of the scenes.
Oh, okay.
Something happens and you get oh, I see how this hurts him, or I see how this affects him. Allerton just getting up and going to go play chess with Mary and oh, screw you, I'm done talking to you now. Or, oh, it's not your day, go away. It really hurts him.
Yeah. So the next day he's like, let me go to the park, let me get a book on chess, and let me try and feed the vultures.
Right.
And then the vultures don't eat the food he brought, and he's like, God damn it.
Fucking can't get the vultures to eat the goddamn Mexican vultures. But yeah, so, it's... And I think what was lost on me when I read it in my 20s Was it? I mean, that's totally showing, right? We tell our students the difference between showing and telling. Like, you could tell people he really, really liked Allerton, and he really wanted to impress him, and he really wanted to be part of his life. But he doesn't say that. He's like, oh, he wants to play chess with Mary. Okay, I'm going to go buy 5 books on chess. I'm going to read them. I'm going to throw them into the lake. And then I'm going to go up and spin a routine about chess and talk about chess and entertain him and be interested in chess. It's almost high school drama. Like, oh, you're into the Cramps. I'm going to go listen to the Cramps so I can talk to you about the Cramps. You know, I see that on the back of your jacket. You know, not that I ever did that. Damn specific example.
Yes, like you, I enjoy the oeuvre of the Cramps.
The counter-intellectualism of the pointillism and the surrealism of the underlying metaphor.
Yeah, no, the existential themes in you know, that wonderful ode, Naked Girl Falling Down the Stairs.
Can your pussy do the dog?
Can your pussy do the dog? Yeah, I've gone chapter by chapter.
I at least derailed him. Go ahead.
I went chapter by chapter trying to figure out what is going on, and it's funny because in a lot of these chapters, all right, there's not a lot going on. Again,
it's
as someone
slow story,
as someone who, you know, it's an existentialist book to a large degree. You know, he's trying to make connections with other people and failing. The one thing that, you know, was kind of dangled in front of us is, oh yeah, so I'm on the search for Yahweh, and yeah, out of 8 chapters. That plot begins in chapter 6.
Yeah, it definitely shows up later, and in the movie, it's a whole different section to compare it to the movie. The movie seems to drastically shift gears with the different sections. He did a good job or a bad job. Like, he kept the drugs pretty much in Junkie and a little bit of queerness in Junkie. Queer is a whole lot of queerness and a little bit of mention of drugs. I think he could have used a little bit more of each, because, you know, Allerton's doing the drugs too and interested in the drugs. And if I almost think that, hey, let's go to South America and look for this crazy drug, this rumored awesome drug, I think that was almost the hook to get time alone with Allerton. And he wanted the drug.
And he wanted the drug.
But, like, you know, what better way to seduce? You know, it's like telling the girl, like, you know, hey, get in the car, baby. We're going to go buy some Coke, you know. That it's just it's a 8th Avenue pickup. That's all it is.
Last year there was a film of Queer, directed by Luca. All right, I'm not going to get this name right. Guadagnino, with a screenplay by Justin Kuritzkis.
Yes.
My apologies for probably mispronouncing both of those names. An excellent film, but I don't know. Oddly took the. It's hard to actually say Hollywood route, since, you know, everything about this is kind of contrary to normal Hollywood programming, but
it's definitely got a indie artistic. It's beautiful. Like the scenes of the centipedes crawling on the wall, the scene of running fingers down abs, and, you know, it's gorgeous. Like, everything is beautifully shot. The colors in it are wonderful. Like, it's gorgeous to look at. Should we talk about how this book ends first before we talk about the movie, or you want to just blend the two together?
Well, I was thinking we could. How long do you want to talk about the movie, do you think? I was thinking we'd talk about it briefly and then pivot back to the book. But all right, let's finish with the.
We'll fix it in post.
We will not be fixing it in post.
You better fix the shit in post.
So through 3 chapters, we definitely have the closest thing we have to like a normal, straightforward plot. All right, we must get Yahweh. All right, let's get on a bus and go to Panama, and then get on a plane and go to Quito, and then travel deep into Ecuador.
And hike for 3 days.
After that, in order to talk to this doctor named Cotter, this experimental, this guy who is experimenting with Yahweh.
Well, he's in the book, he's trying to isolate quinine for medicinal purposes, like a medicinal. He's a medical botanist, so he's trying to, and I forget what quinine is used for, but yeah, trying to isolate that. Just happens to be aware of Yahweh because he's been living in the woods living in the jungle for 3 or 4 years.
And then he gets this junkie showing up in the middle of the jungle with
This middle-aged junkie and his 21-year-old boy toy.
And how does it end? Before the epilogue, how does it end?
But how does it end? It just stops, right? The doctor tells him basically, go away. I don't have anything for you. I don't want you here. Get out. Then the chapter ends, and that's it. Mainly because Burroughs was only writing it because he had the contract for Junkie, and they wanted to know about a second book. So he's like, fine, I'll write this book queer. And he was sending them chapters, but he continued to write. And then he got the letter from Ace Books, like, yeah, we don't want that book. And he just stopped. Like, oh, well, they don't want the book, then there's no point in writing it or finishing it. So it's an unfinished book. And then I guess he wrote an essay or an article about returning to Mexico City like 2 or 3 years later. They just kind of took that article and tacked it onto the end of the book with no explanation of where he's been, where Allerton has been, what happened with Allerton. Like, it just jumps to him kind of that sad returning to someplace you once lived for a long time, but everything is different and hardly anybody's there anymore. And, you know, they painted your favorite restaurant, or they changed this place is closed, and that depressing.
In this case, like, what glorious experience did Lee have in Mexico City where he really needs to tap back into that experience? Like, what nostalgia is he tapping into?
I don't know, because what happened... So Burroughs talks about it in his introduction. The thing that's not in Queer is him accidentally shooting his wife in the head and killing her during a drunken game of William Tell at a party. That's not in Queer. He was writing Queer after that happened, and says that that is infused, like the premonitions or the dread of that infuses the book. But if you don't know about that, you don't notice it. But yeah, he was having to sneak back into Mexico because he had technically been released or cleared of the murder charge, but still was worried about returning, and was he going to get thrown back in jail or extorted for money? Is that what you were getting at? You look like you were trying to lead me in. I'm like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. But
well, as an epilogue, I don't know. It's like, oh, here's more sad after all the sad. And I don't know why he was in Mexico City. Like, okay, let me catch up with whoever's there left over. It kind of drives home the point that he and Allerton never really connected in a deep way.
At least on Allerton's side of it, yeah. Which there is a bit of, he's totally removed. He just wants independence. He doesn't seem to connect with anybody else in Mexico City. Allerton doesn't. And, you know, everybody else just seems to be like, oh, that's him. But Burroughs seems to take it personally. I think because he was so emotionally invested in him. I'm trying to think of the timeline. Finished with Allerton in 1951. He left Mexico City in 52. If he's coming back 2 years later, it's roughly 54. It might have been when he was preparing to go to Morocco and Tangier. I don't know why he was swinging through Mexico City again, unless it was after he was... Because Burroughs continued and went on through South America and did eventually find Yahé and get to experience it and things. It's just not in this book. That might have been what he was doing, and he was returning from that trip to South America, which seems to be hinted at because there's a story. What the friend of his, Joe, tells him, you know, Allerton left 5 months ago hoping to connect with you down there. Didn't you know he was coming? And he's like, no, he never, reached out to me. Not that he could have, how the hell, like, they're both traveling. How is he going to connect with him? Like, so much of this time period was you're just randomly going to run into somebody, if you happen to be in the same city. In the little expatriate, the queer expatriate circle that you're going to run in, you might run into the same people.
So the film...
Yes.
Looks at the book, and there's that moment when the doctor character says, oh, well, if I speak to the medicine men or the villagers, like, they'll hook you up with Yahé. And in the book, that doctor suggests he's going to do that and then never lifts a finger to do it. And after 3 days, William Lee just is like, all right, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And
because it was a miserable trip out to camp in the jungle, where there was just no meat. They were living off of roots and yucca plants and
with critters that could kill them. All about. And in the film, the doctor says, well, I could, if I say something, they will help you. And then that happens instead of not happening.
Right. And that seemed more reminiscent of, from reading Burroughs' bio, what eventually happened. He found a botanist or a doctor, somebody that was more connected, and got him in touch with a bruja that could, or brujo, that could do the ceremony for him and get him hooked up with it. So in watching the film, it was like, oh, they just kind of jumped. They took a scene that wasn't in the book, something that happened in his personal biography, and made it a scene in the movie to give it some sort of a completion. Because is queer a tragedy because they fail at their goal? Would you classify it as a tragedy because they have this goal, they try to accomplish it, they don't, and it just dissolves into sorrow?
Yeah, I think, when we think of catastrophes, all right, this is probably minor stakes in the list of possible catastrophes.
Personal tragedy.
I do think, Lee has two goals. One is find connection and never quite gets there, and, experience Yahé, and fails in the book. The most positive spin you could put on it is, it's anticlimactic.
Yeah, it's a failure.
It's, it's an existential book that at no point arrives at and then here's where things kind of leveled off and became okay.
Well, that sounds on par for existential books.
This is true.
But he goes and hangs out with a stranger on the beach, But yeah, that's where I think they did kind of do the Hollywood ending for the movie, because okay, let's have the doctor just go, oh, you want Yahé? It's all around you. Here's a root of Yahé. Here's a root of Yahé. Let me crush this up and boil it in the yard. They don't even have to go find an Indian to do it.
So we get to see their rather extensive trip.
Yes. Which is just taking all the sex scenes that have been in the movie and just turning it up to 11. And you get that merging, morphing, blending together. Which if I had written it, that's what I would have had the dream, the hallucination, the dream. They merge together in this awesome amount of passionate sex. And the way I would have ended it is Lee would have come out of the trip, woken up the next morning, and Allerton's just gone. That, just no explanation. He's just not there. And Lee's like, did he leave me or did I absorb him? Just a really
ambiguous.
Well, I was thinking more of fucking with the viewer, but yeah. In my mind, he would have absorbed him and taken him and, completely ingested him. But and the movie doesn't stop there.
No. So, right about when the book stops, the movie finds a completely new gear and has a lot more work to do. Yeah. Not quite the director's cut of the Lord of the Rings, but...
You want me to rant about it, or you want to talk about it?
Oh, I don't need to rant about it.
So I do, because the famous thing that's not in the book that most people know about Burroughs is that he accidentally shot his wife playing a drunken game of William Tell. And there's a party in the movie where the Mary character is at a party and she's got a little toy cap gun and she's shooting it and a guy puts a glass on his head. So it's kind of foreshadowing this. In that Let's Return to Mexico City, Burroughs is going to the same hotel room where he had spent time with Allerton, and he kind of hallucinates Allerton being there or imagines Allerton being there. And Allerton puts a glass on his head and says, hey, or doesn't actually say it, but Lee pulls out a gun, because there's guns throughout the whole movie. He's always packing a pistol. It's very casual, but there's just guns throughout it, and I should have seen it coming. But they reenact the scene of Joan's death, but with Allerton. And for some reason, it really pissed me off. You're going to include this famous thing, but you're going to flip it and make it Allerton instead of Joan. Just seemed extra disrespectful to Joan and Burroughs. How did that strike you? Or you just didn't give a shit?
No, I felt at least a tinge of what you're talking about. And, I was also reminded of, it's a quote attributed to Henry James, but it doesn't really sound like James.
Is it 500 words in one sentence?
No.
Then it's not Henry James.
Well, there's a beginning there, solving that riddle. No, it's, the expression is, share a dream, lose a reader. Now, this is supposed to be a Yahé trip, so it's hard to tell, okay, is this just somebody tripping balls, or is this a spiritual thing? Is this him processing what he's actually experienced in real life? And one of the things that happens through this long trip sequence, didn't it double back on itself where you think he's out of the trip, but then you're like back in the trip?
I thought he came out of the trip because they're talking with the doctor the next day. The doctor's like, you all should keep going because you should stay and do it some more because you took it to another level that most people don't go to. And she wanted to see what would happen if they continued to take it. The doctor in the movie is a woman. The doctor in the book is a man. Just for if that seems confusing to anybody, why we keep switching genders. But yeah, I felt they were completely out of it, and he was either deep in memory or completely on a different drug when he was back in Mexico City and he hallucinates Allerton. But could have been the same big long trip. The
sequence was long, and I remember there's a certain point when I'm like, I feel like I've lost the dramatic thread. And
that's because the movie already ended once, and now we're in the second.
Well, there's that, and also watching it as an adaptation. So I think I appreciated that it was trying to be ambitious in its adaptation of queer and wasn't simply, if you ended the movie where they end the book.
Right. It's unfinished.
It would feel really unfinished. So I remember feeling like, no, I'll give it rope. And it's an excellent movie, but I can't give it the full seal of approval for what it was doing in that trip sequence, partly going on too long. And I feel like, okay, what am I going to make out of all these different parts? I feel like it was too subjective. And I could, and I was getting irritated when they're pulling in Easter eggs, and if you know about Burroughs' life, well, then here's a thing. And then if you know Naked Lunch, here's a thing. Anexia is referenced somewhere in the there's a sign in one of the settings,
right,
which is from Naked Lunch, right?
Naked Lunch. It's one of the
it's next to Interzone
corporations, or the city, the country. Yeah, in the book, the Indians have hunted the area dry of animals because they had made a lot of money working for the Shell Corporation and bought themselves shotguns. And so they've just decimated the wildlife in the area, which is why they can't hunt anything. Or when they go out hunting, they don't find anything. In the movie, they changed it. Instead of Shell, they changed it to Nexia. So that was a drop. That was a change or an Easter egg for Naked Lunch.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah.
I found that a little distracting because I'm exactly the person who gets the references. And yet,
it might have been they didn't want to be sued by Shell, or they're covering their asses in the movie. But no, they didn't cover the asses. I'm sorry. There's plenty of ass in the movie. They wanted to cover themselves legally in the movie.
Lee was played by Daniel Craig. And the sex scenes, I think, are credible.
Oh, that first blowjob is incredible, mainly because of what you don't see. But yeah, I was impressed. I like that.
Well, I think of the film of Naked Lunch, which I think is a masterpiece, but also it's being very careful about what it's showing.
Yeah,
in terms of sexuality, and I feel like, all right, years and years later, the film of Queer.
Yes, we finally actually have full frontal male nudity, which reminds me, I'm surprised Ewan McGregor wasn't in it with as much penis, flopping around in this movie. Ewan McGregor really needed to be in it because he loves to.
He had a scheduling conflict.
Aside from Star Wars, every other movie, it's got to be in his contract. You've got to see my penis in this movie. Pillow Book, Shallow Grave, Trainspotting 1, Trainspotting 2. Not that I have them memorized. But, so that's ending number 2 in the movie. And then that wasn't enough. So then we kind of cut to this weird, like, Lee walks out of the room, and when he gets to the door, he fades away, like he dissolves. He turns into a ghost and just goes to nothing. Roll credits, that's the end. No, we're going to cut to another scene. Now there's an old Burroughs, right? Now it's Daniel Craig made to look like the 80-year-old Burroughs, sitting in a chair in the same hotel room, gets out of the chair, shakily walks to the bed, lays down, and fucking dies. What the fuck was that?
Oh, Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick with
directed
David
by
Lynch.
Stanley Kubrick, written by Ernest Hemingway? What the fuck? William Burroughs died alone in the rain.
It was more like the ending of 2001 with some David Lynch kind of like trippiness thrown in there. So part of it felt brilliant, part of it felt like boilerplate and like, okay, I know.
But Burroughs didn't fucking die like that.
No.
Didn't die in Mexico City. Maybe it was the death of William Lee, if you want to be postmodern and metaphorical about it.
All right, so final thoughts.
Like, I'm fine with people merging and having sex and turning into centipedes and having auxiliary assholes in the middle of their forehead. But God damn it, you get the death scene right? Like, I've got my weird lines about what I'll accept and what I won't accept.
Keep your historical facts straight.
Yeah, God damn it. Like, so yeah, I don't understand my own inconsistencies, but yeah.
Well, I think, with good books, we are co-creating the experience with the author. And so in movies, play fast and loose with it, it can really piss us off.
Yeah, and I've been reading Burroughs on and off for 30 years. I've read 2 biographies. I've read a shitload of stuff. I've done a lot of research on Joan's death and, those situations. I've seen Naked Lunch more than I can count. So I probably... Not to be arrogant, I probably am more informed than most people going to see Queer, right? It might be an entire generation's introduction to William Burroughs. And boy, are they going to be shocked when they get into the other shit. But getting into it, and you're like, oh, this is intriguing. Let me look this up, and it might be interesting or help get people into it. But I was just like, anyway, I'm a grumpy old man at this point. So.
Well, and I think Queer is a good book for grumpy old men. It's
sexually frustrated, grumpy old, socially awkward men. Yeah,
with these fun, bizarre rants in them.
Yes.
These routines and.
Which is what I love about Burroughs is I'm the audience that's entertained by the routines. I don't look at Naked Lunch as a whole novel. I look at it as a collection of insanity, little clips of chaos and insanity.
Well, we will get there in 2 more installments, but this was our conversation about Queer. Sean, do you have anything you would like to ask or say?
No, good discussion.
That works. No applause. Yes, thank you. We bow.